Professor Robert George, the founder of the American Principles Project and the McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence at Princeton University. And before we meet the candidates, I'd like to turn it over to Senator DeMint for a word of welcome.
Thank you, David, and welcome to all Americans who've joined us today to help select the next President of the United States. Our next President may very well be on this stage today. It's important that we elect a President who has the character, the courage, and the skills to lead the greatest nation in history. And it's extremely important that Republicans nominate a candidate who will stand for the principles of American exceptionalism that have made this country the greatest, most prosperous, and freest nation on earth. Unfortunately, our current president has not followed those principles. He's made a bad situation much, much worse. Now our country hangs on the edge of an economic cliff, and 2012 may be our last chance to turn things around. The forum today is designed to give the candidates the opportunity to talk about America's principles and how they will apply those principles to pull us away from that cliff and put us back on the road to prosperity. Again, thank you all for joining us, and David, thank you for moderating our discussion.
Thank you, sir. And now, candidates, if you'll come to the stage as your name is called and remain until the last candidate has been introduced. Former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Texas U.S. Representative Ron Paul. Former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives Newt Gingrich. Georgia businessman Herman Cain. And Minnesota U.S. Representative Michelle Bachmann. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm South Carolina welcome to all of our candidates. Texas Governor Rick Perry was scheduled to be with us this evening, but because of wildfires that are threatening his state, he is back in Texas. We regret he was unable to join us, but we can understand having to go back to Texas for that reason. At this point, I'd ask all the candidates to go backstage to their rooms to be sequestered until they're called on stage, except for Representative Bachmann.
Hi.
Now, Representative Bachmann, to start our discussion, our panelists have asked each candidate to prepare 3 minutes of opening remarks to define their understanding of the foundational first principles of our republic, as well as to discuss what they believe is the constitutional scope and role of the federal government and the actions that they would take as president to reflect that role. Congresswoman Bachmann, the floor is yours for 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to be able to come to the Palmetto Freedom Forum to explain to all of you why I call myself a constitutional conservative. First, consider a quotation that shows the wisdom of a former Republican governor from Massachusetts, Calvin Coolidge, that says this: "To live under the American Constitution is the greatest political privilege that was ever accorded to the human race." Now consider another quotation that was given by the man who occupied the presidency of the United States longer than any other, Democrat Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said, "The United States Constitution has proved itself the most marvelously elastic compilation of the rules of government ever written." This is a wildly divergent view of the Constitution. One recognizes the privilege of living in a government that shows constraint of political power. The other demonstrates the Constitution as a means to an end, which sees elasticity and twisting and bending to achieve political objectives. This, I believe, will be our choice in 2012. Which view of the Constitution will we prefer? And the beauty of the Constitution is contained in the first principles, and it's plain on its face. It says that we are a united states. We have a federal government with enumerated powers. We have 3 branches of government. They're distinct, but they're wholly compatible. We also have a Bill of Rights that embodies the core principle of the Declaration of Independence, which is that God has given to every individual inalienable rights, and they cannot be denied by any human power. As President of the United States, my first question to any political appointee would be, what do you see as your role under the Constitution? And when I am working with the Congress of the United States, my guiding principle will be that the government works best when it acts within the limitations of the Constitution, but that it fails when it denies that principle and instead makes decisions made on political expediency. You see, I will understand something from day one as president that the current president of the United States has failed to demonstrate an understanding, and it's this. It's that when the people of the United States place this awesome responsibility and privilege to be the president, what they have given is the ability to act under the Constitution and to not to place oneself over the Constitution, that sacred document.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Michelle, I'll start the questioning. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate you doing it. And let's continue on what you're talking about, because it's one of the most important subjects to me, is that our next president really understand what limited government means. If you are president, what are the things in Washington that you would downsize, eliminate, or redirect to the state? So are we doing things at the federal level that we just shouldn't do at all? And what would you recommend that we not do anymore? What programs?
Well, all across the United States, wherever I have gone, this is something that I have seen audiences tell me over and over, as well as when I've gone into businesses and to speak with people directly. They see that the current United States government and its framework is acting outside of the bounds of the Constitution. Probably the most obvious, I would say, Jim, would be this: Obamacare and the individual mandate that is unconstitutional and currently is contained in Obamacare. I think another action that people see as unconstitutional are the appointment of czars to speak to the United States president, because that's bypassing Congress and going directly to the president. Here's something else. The President of the United States took an oath to faithfully execute the laws of the United States, but the President has also stated that he sees that the law of the Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional. He has said that he will not uphold that law. He has also said he will not uphold current deportation laws that apply to illegal aliens. These are areas where we see unconstitutionality. Within the spending that we're seeing with the federal government is spending far in excess of what it takes in. Areas of government would include, for instance, I believe, the Department of Education, because the Constitution does not specifically enumerate, nor does it give to the federal government the role and duty to superintend over education that historically has been held by the parents and by local communities and by state government. To put that into the federal government, as we saw a Department of Education in the late 1970s, has eviscerated the constitutional understanding that the control of education truly lies with the parents. That's just one example.
Good. Thank you. Let's jump subjects. This week, President Obama is going to give another jobs speech. As CBO has said, we can't score a speech. But jobs are clearly a big issue for our country. The economy seems to be stalled. People are hurting. What would you do? What is your jobs program?
Well, as President of the United States and also as a former federal tax litigation attorney and also as a business owner myself, my husband and I have created and we've created jobs and we run a successful business. We believe in profit. We actually think that profit is a good thing and that we should encourage that in this country. And as President of the United States, one of the first things that I would do today is I would offer to the United States Congress that earnings that are accrued by United States companies earned overseas be brought into the United States with a 0% rate on repatriation. Part of the problem has been $1.2 trillion worth of earnings are staying overseas. This is real capital that belongs to American companies that wouldn't have to be borrowed at taxpayer expense, nor would it have to be paid back, nor would we pay interest on the earnings. It would come into the United States as a $1.2 trillion capital infusion, and that would create jobs in the United States. Secondly, what I would do, Jim, what we need, again, are not government-directed solutions. We need private-directed solutions, and we also need permanent solutions rather than temporary government gimmicks. That's what President Obama has given to the American people. And so I would change the corporate tax rate, which is currently about the highest in the world, down to about 20% level. Ultimately, I'd like it to see it go far lower, but immediately I think we could bring it down to 20%. And as president, I would also put a current moratorium on the implementation of Obamacare, just as the president did last Friday on the implementation of EPA rules as well.
One of the big economic issues and political issues in our country relate to unions and union power, government workers. And folks have told me you've had some different opinions on that over the years. As you know, right now the federal government has a law that if you're working for a company that's unionized, you have to join a union unless your state opts out. Fortunately, South Carolina is one of the 22 states that has opted out. But what is your position on the unionization of government workers and the influence of unions? I mean, we saw it with Obamacare, but what is your position on the right to work, a national right to work law?
Well, I support the right to work law, both nationally and at the state levels as well. I think it's very important that all American workers have the right to work. South Carolina has that right. Unfortunately, President Obama has been seeking to deny that right, in particular when it comes to the Boeing Corporation through the NLRB. When President Obama appointed on the NLRB someone who has a pro-union vote and a pro-union worldview, they have denied to the people of South Carolina literally thousands of high-paying jobs in this state. And it isn't just this one company that's being impacted. It's other companies from other nations that are looking at South Carolina. They would love to come and start businesses and build businesses here. I spoke with the governor of South Carolina. She told me that companies from as diverse areas as Japan, Canada, and Germany would love to be able to put new jobs and new businesses in this state, but they're wondering what the ruling of the NLRB will be, and they don't know if they will be able to enjoy the advantages of a right-to-work state. I believe in the right to work, and I uphold that. And as President of the United States, I can guarantee you I would not appoint anyone to the NLRB who would not respect the right to work.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to turn you over to your colleague.
Michelle, Ronald Reagan spoke all of his political life so eloquently about the shining city on the hill, standing strong and true on a granite ridge. Are we still that city? And if so, what is the next level of our destiny, and how would you take us there?
We absolutely remain that city. People think now that we are in a time of decline. We could choose to go in that direction. As my opening remarks said, we could have a view of the Constitution that sees it as elastic and one that is not permanent. Those comments actually come from the book of Matthew. And those comments were also given in a sermon by John Winthrop when he was on the Arabella with some of the early pilgrims in 1630. He encouraged the pilgrims to live their lives in such a way, once they came to the United States, that their lives would be that shining city on the hill. And again, he went on to say that if we don't choose to live our lives that way, our nation will become but a byword and a story in history. I believe that, again, now is our time for choosing. If we choose to live under the principles of the Constitution,